I never thought the best day of my sister's life would become the worst day of mine. My name is Angelina, and I am a 32-year-old architect living in Seattle. After years of hard work, I had finally purchased my dream penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern kitchen, the spacious balcony where I could watch the sunset every evening. It represented everything I had worked for, every sacrifice I had made. But when my sister Madison saw it, something shifted in her eyes. Something that should have warned me about what was coming at her wedding. Something that would change our relationship forever. Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever dealt with family members who felt entitled to your hard-earned success. And stick around, because what my sister did at her wedding in front of 200 guests will absolutely shock you. Let me tell you about the penthouse that started all of this drama. I work as a senior architect at a prestigious firm downtown, and I had just completed the biggest project of my career, a mixed-use development that took 3 years to design and oversee. The success of that project came with a substantial bonus, which finally gave me the down payment I needed for my dream home. The penthouse sits on the 20th floor of a luxury building in Belltown. When you walk in, the first thing you notice is the panoramic view of Elliott Bay stretching out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Space Needle rises majestically in the distance, and on clear days, you can see Mount Rainier. The unit itself is 2,000 square feet with an open floor plan. The kitchen features granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and a large island perfect for entertaining. The master bedroom has a walk-in closet that could house a small family, and the master bathroom has a soaking tub positioned perfectly to enjoy the water view. This place cost me $2.3 million. I put down 20%, which meant I had to save almost $500,000 for the down payment alone. Do you know what it takes to save that kind of money on an architect's salary? Even a successful one? It meant eating ramen noodles for dinner more nights than I care to admit. It meant skipping vacations while my friends traveled to Europe and Asia. It meant working 80-hour weeks and taking on weekend consulting jobs. It meant saying no to expensive dinners, designer clothes, and luxury spa days. Every dollar went toward this goal. The day I got the keys, I stood in that living room and cried. Not just because it was beautiful, but because it represented my independence. Growing up, I always felt like I had to prove myself, especially compared to my sister Madison. This penthouse was my proof. I had made it on my own terms. Madison is 3 years older than me, and throughout our childhood, she was always the golden child. She had natural charm that made people gravitate toward her, while I was the quiet one who preferred books to parties. Our parents, though they loved us both, always seemed to find Madison's achievements more noteworthy. When Madison made the cheerleading squad, it was cause for celebration. When I made the honor roll, it was expected. When Madison got her first job in marketing after college, my parents threw her a party. When I landed my first architecture position at a competitive firm, they asked if I was sure I could handle the stress. Madison now works for a mid-sized marketing agency. She does well enough, but her salary is probably about 60% of what I earn. She lives with her boyfriend Kevin in his one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. It is a nice enough place, but nothing compared to what I have achieved. And that, I think, is where the trouble started. About 6 months after I moved into the penthouse, Madison began visiting more frequently. She would drop by unannounced, always with some excuse. She needed to borrow something, or she was in the neighborhood, or she wanted to show Kevin something nearby. But I noticed how she would walk through the space, touching the marble countertops, commenting on the view, asking about the building amenities. "This location is so convenient for everything," she would say, standing on the balcony. "And this space is perfect for entertaining. You could fit so many people in here." There was something in her tone that made me uncomfortable, though I could not quite put my finger on it at the time. The first real sign of trouble came 3 weeks before her wedding. Madison called me on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing blueprints for a new project. The conversation started normally enough. She asked about work, mentioned some wedding planning stress, complained about Kevin being difficult about the guest list. Then, seemingly casually, she brought up her honeymoon plans. "So, Kevin and I have been talking about the honeymoon," she said. We were thinking it might be nice to stay local for the first few days before we fly to Hawaii. Just to decompress after the wedding without having to travel immediately. That sounds nice, I replied, not really paying attention as I marked up a drawing. There are some beautiful hotels downtown with spa packages. Actually, Madison continued, we were wondering if we could stay at your place for those first few days. Kevin's apartment is just so small, and your penthouse would be perfect. We could really relax and enjoy the space. I stopped what I was doing. You want to stay at my penthouse for your honeymoon? Just for a few days, she said quickly. We would take great care of everything, obviously, and it would mean so much to us to start our marriage somewhere special like that. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. This was my home, my sanctuary, my most personal space. The thought of anyone else staying there, even Madison and Kevin, made me deeply uncomfortable. Plus, there were practical considerations. I had work the next week, meetings scheduled from my home office, and clients coming by to review plans. Madison, I appreciate that you think the place is nice, but I cannot let you stay there, I said as gently as I could. It is my home, and I need it for work that week, but I can recommend some amazing hotels downtown. The Fairmont has incredible suites, and the Four Seasons has those rooms with the bay views you love. The silence on the other end of the line stretched longer than felt comfortable. When Madison finally spoke, her voice had changed completely. Oh, she said, cold and clipped. I see. I guess I misunderstood how close we were as sisters. Madison, this is not about how close we are. This is about boundaries and the fact that it is my home. Right? Your home. That you cannot share with your sister on the most important weekend of her life. Got it. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone, wondering how a simple conversation had gone so wrong so quickly, but this was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Madison launched what I can only describe as a full-scale emotional manipulation campaign. It started with family dinners becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Every Sunday, our family gathers at our parents' house for dinner. It is a tradition we have maintained since we were children, and usually it is the highlight of my week. But the Sunday after our phone call, the atmosphere was noticeably tense. Madison arrived late, and when she did show up, she barely acknowledged me. During dinner, she made pointed comments about family support and being there for each other during important life events. When my mother asked about wedding preparations, Madison sighed dramatically. Everything is coming together, she said, though it would be easier if I felt like my whole family was really invested in making this special for me. My father looked confused. What do you mean, honey? We are all excited about the wedding. Madison glanced at me, then back at our parents. Oh, I am sure everyone is excited. I just thought maybe my sister would want to help make the honeymoon special too. But apparently, I was wrong about that. I felt my face flush. Madison, we talked about this. Yes, we did, she replied sweetly. And you made your priorities very clear. My mother looked between us. What is going on? What happened with the honeymoon? Before I could explain, Madison launched into her version of events. According to her, I had cruelly refused to let her stay at the family property during the most important time of her life. She made it sound like I was hoarding some ancestral estate rather than protecting my personal home that I had worked years to afford. Angelina has this beautiful penthouse, she told our parents. It would be perfect for Kevin and me to start our marriage, just for a few days. But she said no. My father frowned. Angelina, why would you not want to help your sister? I tried to explain about work commitments, about the fact that it was my home, about reasonable boundaries. But somehow, in the face of Madison's tears and emotional appeals, my practical reasons sounded selfish and cold. I saved for years to buy that place, I said. It represents my independence and my hard work. It is not unreasonable for me to want to keep it as my personal space. But it is just for a few days, my mother chimed in, and it is for such a special occasion. Madison dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I guess I just thought family came first. I guess I was wrong. The conversation continued in circles with Madison painting herself as the wronged party, and me as the selfish sister who cared more about material possessions than family bonds. By the end of the evening, I felt exhausted and confused. Was I being unreasonable? Was I prioritizing my apartment over my sister's happiness? But the manipulation did not stop at family dinners. Madison recruited Kevin to help with the campaign. Suddenly, I was receiving calls from him asking if we could meet for coffee to clear the air. During these conversations, Kevin would speak earnestly about how much the penthouse meant to Madison, how she had always looked up to me, and how devastated she was by my refusal. "She really sees you as her role model," Kevin told me over lattes at a coffee shop near my office. "When she talks about your success, your independence, there is so much admiration there. I think in her mind, staying at your place would be like sharing in that success for just a moment." It was emotional manipulation disguised as heartfelt conversation, and I almost fell for it. Kevin made it sound like letting them stay at my penthouse would be an act of sisterly generosity rather than a violation of my personal boundaries. Madison also began recruiting extended family members to her cause. Suddenly, I was getting calls from our Aunt Patricia, our cousin Sarah, and even our grandmother. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They would start by asking how I was doing, then casually mention how excited they were about Madison's wedding, and then express concern about some family tension they had heard about. "Your sister mentioned there was some kind of disagreement about the honeymoon," Aunt Patricia said during one particularly awkward phone call. "I hope you girls can work it out. Family is the most important thing you know." The pressure was relentless and exhausting. Every conversation became an opportunity for someone to remind me about family loyalty, about the importance of supporting each other, about how weddings are once-in-a-lifetime events. I began to dread family gatherings and even simple phone calls. The breaking point came 2 weeks before the wedding when Madison showed up at my penthouse unannounced. I was working from home that day, reviewing final plans for a commercial project when my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I could see Madison standing in the hallway. But she was not alone. Our mother was with her, and so was Kevin. I should have refused to let them up, but I was so tired of the conflict that I hoped maybe we could finally resolve this face-to-face. When I opened the door, Madison walked in without waiting for an invitation, followed by Kevin and my mother. They looked around the space with appraising eyes as if they were already planning how to rearrange the furniture. "We need to talk," Madison announced, positioning herself in the center of my living room like she was holding court. "Madison, you cannot just show up here with an entourage and demand to talk," I said. "I was working." "This will not take long," she replied. "I just need you to understand what you are doing to me, to our family, by being so stubborn about this." What followed was an hour-long emotional assault disguised as a family meeting. Madison cried. Kevin spoke earnestly about their financial situation and how much a free place to stay would mean to them, and my mother lectured me about the importance of family sacrifice. "Look at this place," Madison said, gesturing around the living room. "You have so much space, so much luxury. We are just asking for a few days. How can you be so selfish?" "Madison, this is not about having space," I tried to explain. "This is about boundaries. This is my home. I worked years to afford it, and I have the right to decide who stays here." "Rights?" Kevin scoffed. "We are talking about family here, not legal contracts." My mother nodded in agreement. "Angelina, honey, sometimes we have to put family before our own comfort. Madison needs this. She has always struggled more than you have, and this would mean the world to her." That comment stung more than I expected. The implication that my success had come easily, that I had not struggled, that somehow Madison deserved my help because she had not achieved as much. It was exactly the dynamic that had played out our entire lives, with Madison's needs and feelings taking priority over mine. "I have said no," I stated firmly. "That is my final answer. You need to respect that decision." Madison's expression shifted from pleading to furious. "Fine," she snapped, "but do not expect to be welcome at my wedding if you are going to be this selfish. If you cannot support me on the most important day of my life, then maybe you do not belong there." The ultimatum hung in the air like a threat. My mother gasped. "Madison, you do not mean that?" "I absolutely mean it," Madison replied, staring directly at me. "If my own sister cannot make a small sacrifice for my wedding, then she is not really my sister at all." Kevin nodded in support. "Madison deserves to have people there who actually care about her happiness." I looked at the three of them standing in my living room, essentially holding my relationship with my family hostage unless I gave in to Madison's demands. The manipulation was so blatant, so cruel, that I felt something inside me harden. "You know what?" I said quietly. "If that is how you really feel, then maybe I will not attend the wedding, because I will not be blackmailed into giving up my home, and I will not apologize for setting reasonable boundaries." Madison's eyes flashed with rage. "You are going to regret this, Angelina. When this all blows up in your face, do not come crying to me. Everyone is going to see what kind of person you really are." They left, without another word, slamming my front door hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood in my living room, surrounded by the luxury I had worked so hard to achieve, and wondered if I had just lost my family over a penthouse. The week leading up to the wedding was torture. I received no communication from Madison, Kevin, or my parents. The silence felt like punishment designed to make me reconsider my decision. I threw myself into work, but even my colleagues noticed that something was wrong. "You look stressed," my assistant Jennifer mentioned during a project meeting. "Everything okay?" I gave her the abbreviated version of events, expecting sympathy or at least understanding. Instead, she looked thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" Jennifer said. "Why is it so important to you that they not stay at your place? I mean, it is just for a few days, right?" Even people outside my family were questioning my decision. I began to wonder if I was being unreasonably rigid. Maybe I should just give in and let them have the penthouse for their honeymoon. Maybe maintaining family peace was more important than maintaining boundaries. But every time I considered calling Madison to apologize, I would walk through my penthouse and remember what it represented. This was not just an apartment. This was proof that I could succeed on my own terms. It was my sanctuary, my safe space, the physical manifestation of my independence. Letting Madison take it over even temporarily felt like surrendering something essential about myself. The Thursday before the wedding, I made a decision. I would attend the ceremony and reception, despite the ultimatum. Madison was still my sister, and whatever our differences, I wanted to be there for her wedding day. I bought a modest navy blue dress, something elegant but not attention-grabbing. My plan was to arrive quietly, witness the ceremony, offer congratulations, and leave early. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday at a country club overlooking Puget Sound. It was exactly the kind of venue Madison had dreamed of since we were children. Elegant, expensive, with panoramic water views that rivaled my penthouse. As I drove up the winding road to the club that morning, I felt a mixture of nervousness and sadness. This should have been a day of celebration of family unity. Instead, I was attending my sister's wedding as an unwelcome guest. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Madison looked stunning in her designer gown, all flowing fabric and delicate lace. Kevin stood at the altar, looking nervous but happy. Our parents sat in the front row, dabbing at their eyes with tissues. For a moment, watching Madison walk down the aisle, I forgot about our fight. She was my sister, and she was radiant. I sat in the back, hoping to remain unnoticed. During the ceremony, I caught my mother's eye a few times. She looked sad and conflicted, as if she wanted to acknowledge me, but was not sure if she should. My father avoided looking in my direction entirely. The reception started smoothly enough. The cocktail hour was held on a terrace overlooking the water, with servers passing champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Madison and Kevin worked the room like the perfect wedding couple, accepting congratulations and posing for photos. I stayed near the edges of the crowd, nursing a glass of wine and watching from a distance. Several family friends and relatives approached me during cocktail hour. Most were polite, but clearly uncomfortable. Word had spread about our family drama, and people seemed unsure how to navigate the tension. Aunt Patricia made a point of mentioning how beautiful Madison looked and how happy she seemed, with the clear implication that I should be doing more to contribute to that happiness. Weddings are such special occasions, she said pointedly. It is important that everyone does their part to make the day perfect. I smiled and nodded, refusing to be drawn into another conversation about my supposed selfishness. I was here to support Madison, even if she had made it clear that my support was not wanted. When dinner was announced, I was relieved to move inside and take my assigned seat. I had been placed at a table with distant cousins and family friends, far from the head table where Madison and Kevin sat with the wedding party and our parents. The message was clear: I was being tolerated, not welcomed. Dinner proceeded without incident. The food was excellent, the speeches were heartfelt, and Madison glowed with happiness as friends and family toasted her new marriage. I began to think that maybe I could get through this evening without any major confrontation. I was planning to leave during the dancing after fulfilling my obligation to attend. Then came the moment that changed everything. After the traditional speeches from the best man and maid of honor, Madison stood up with the microphone. This was not part of the planned program. The wedding coordinator looked confused and Kevin appeared surprised. Madison tapped the microphone to get everyone's attention. I want to say thank you to everyone who helped make this day so special. She began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. Kevin and I are so grateful to have all of you here to celebrate with us. The room filled with warm applause. People smiled and raised their glasses. This seemed like a standard bride thank you speech. I especially want to thank my parents, Madison continued, who have supported us through every step of this process, and our wedding party, who have been amazing, and all of our friends and family who have gone out of their way to help us prepare for this new chapter in our lives. More applause. I relaxed slightly, thinking this would be a generic gratitude speech. Then Madison's tone shifted. There is one person I need to address specifically, though. Someone who chose not to be part of this celebration in the way that family should be. My stomach dropped. I could feel eyes turning toward me, conversations stopping as people sensed drama brewing. Madison looked directly at me, her expression hard, despite her wedding day smile. My sister Angelina is here tonight, which I suppose I should appreciate. But I think everyone should know that when I asked her for one small favor to help make our honeymoon special, she refused. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. 200 people were now staring between Madison and me, trying to understand what was happening. You see, Madison continued, her voice taking on a wounded tone, Angelina has this beautiful penthouse in downtown Seattle, a place that would have been perfect for Kevin and me to spend our first few days as husband and wife. But when I asked if we could stay there, she said no. She told me that her apartment was more important than my happiness. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and anger. This was not how it had happened, but Madison was rewriting history in front of our entire family and all their friends. I wanted to stand up and defend myself, but I was frozen in my chair. I guess some people care more about their possessions than their family, Madison said with a sad smile. But I wanted everyone to know that despite my sister's selfishness, Kevin and I are still committed to building a loving family of our own. The applause this time was scattered and uncomfortable. People did not know how to respond to this public airing of family drama. I saw several relatives looking at me with disappointment and confusion. The narrative Madison had created painted me as the villain in her wedding story. I could not take it anymore. I stood up, intending to leave quietly without causing further disruption. But Madison was not finished. "Oh, are you leaving already?" she called out through the microphone, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I suppose I should not be surprised. You have already made it clear that you do not really want to be part of this family. Every person in that room was now staring at me. I felt exposed, humiliated, and furious. Madison had chosen the most public possible moment to attack me, turning her wedding reception into a stage for family drama. "Madison, that is not fair. And you know it," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "What is not fair?" Madison replied, now stepping away from the head table and walking toward me, "is having a sister who puts her precious apartment above her family." I could see Kevin trying to intervene, reaching for Madison's arm and whispering something in her ear. But she shook him off focused entirely on this public confrontation. You have made this about something it was never about, I said, backing toward the exit. I set a reasonable boundary, and you have turned it into this huge drama. Reasonable. Madison's voice rose, echoing through the sound system. Reasonable would have been helping your sister on her wedding day. Reasonable would have been putting family first for once in your life. I was almost to the door when Madison caught up with me. She grabbed my arm, forcing me to turn around and face her. The microphone had been left behind, but in the dead silence of the reception hall, every word carried clearly. You have ruined everything, she hissed. My wedding, planning my honeymoon this whole day. All because you are too selfish to share what you have. Madison, let go of me, I said firmly. You are making a scene at your own wedding. I am making a scene, she shrieked. You are the one who came here after refusing to help your own sister. You are the one who has been selfish and horrible through this entire process. The room was absolutely silent except for Madison's voice getting increasingly shrill. I could see our parents looking mortified, Kevin appearing helpless, and 200 guests watching this family melt down with fascination and horror. That is not what happened, and you know it? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I said no to one request, and you have turned it into this whole narrative about me not caring about family. Because that is exactly what it is, Madison screamed, and then she slapped me. The sound echoed through the silent reception hall like a gunshot. My cheeks stung, my eyes filled with tears, and I staggered backward from the force of the blow. 200 people had just witnessed my sister assault me at her own wedding. For a moment, nobody moved. Madison stood there, breathing heavily, her wedding makeup slightly smudged, her perfect hair slightly mussed. I held my hand to my burning cheek, too shocked to speak or move. Maybe that will teach you some family loyalty, Madison said, her voice cold and satisfied. I turned and ran for the exit, tears streaming down my face, my cheek throbbing with pain and humiliation. Behind me, I could hear the eruption of voices as the reception guests began processing what they had just witnessed. I pushed through the doors and out into the evening air, gasping and sobbing. I had made it halfway to my car when someone called out behind me, "Miss, please, wait!" I turned to see an elderly gentleman approaching me with concern written all over his face. He was well-dressed, probably in his 70s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I saw what happened in there. That was completely unacceptable." I wiped at my tears, still too shaken to speak coherently. "My name is Harold Patterson," he continued. "I am a family friend of the club owner, and I was invited to the wedding tonight. But more importantly, I am a retired judge, and what I just witnessed was assault." The word hit me like a physical blow. Assault. I had not even thought of it in those terms, but he was right. Madison had struck me in front of 200 witnesses. "She is my sister," I managed to say through my tears. "That does not matter," Judge Patterson replied firmly. "Family relationships do not excuse criminal behavior. What happened in there was assault and battery, witnessed by a room full of people. The public humiliation makes it even worse." I stared at him, processing what he was saying. "I do not think I could press charges against my own sister." Miss Judge Patterson said gently, "I have been on the bench for 35 years. I have seen countless cases of family violence, and they almost always start with incidents just like this. Your sister publicly humiliated you, physically assaulted you, and then showed no remorse. This behavior will escalate if there are no consequences." He pulled out his phone. "I am going to call the police. You do not have to decide right now whether to press charges, but this incident needs to be documented." As Judge Patterson made the phone call, I stood in the parking lot of my sister's wedding reception, my cheeks still burning, my dress wrinkled from my hurried exit, and tried to process what had just happened. My sister had slapped me in front of 200 people, and now a judge was calling the police. 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived to take my statement. They were professional and sympathetic, clearly experienced in handling domestic disputes. One of them, Officer Martinez, took detailed notes while I recounted the events of the evening. "The assault occurred in front of multiple witnesses?" she asked. 200 people? I confirmed. And this was at her wedding reception. Yes? Officer Martinez exchanged a look with her partner. That shows a significant level of disregard for consequences. Most people would not commit assault in such a public setting unless they felt completely justified or completely out of control. Judge Patterson provided his contact information as a witness and offered to testify if needed. Several other wedding guests had also come forward to offer their accounts of what had happened. You have grounds for assault charges, Officer Martinez told me, but you do not have to decide tonight. You can take some time to think about it. What would happen if I did press charges? I asked. Given the public nature of the assault and the number of witnesses, the case would likely result in conviction. The officer explained. Your sister would face criminal charges, possible jail time, and definitely community service and anger management counseling. I felt overwhelmed by the weight of the decision. This was my sister despite everything that had happened. Could I really send her to jail? Judge Patterson seemed to sense my internal struggle. Miss Angelina, he said quietly, can I share some wisdom from my years on the bench? I nodded. People who cross the line into physical violence rarely stop on their own. They need consequences to understand that their behavior is unacceptable. If you do not hold your sister accountable for this assault, you are teaching her that she can get away with escalating behavior. Next time, it might be worse. Next time, it might be someone who cannot defend themselves. His words resonated deeply. I thought about the months of manipulation, the emotional blackmail, the public humiliation, and finally the physical assault. Madison had progressively escalated her behavior because there had never been real consequences. I want to press charges, I said firmly. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. With 200 witnesses and clear video evidence from the club's security cameras, Madison's guilt was never in question. The real question was how she would respond to being held accountable for her actions. Initially, Madison and my parents tried to dismiss the charges as a misunderstanding. They contacted me repeatedly, asking me to drop the case and work things out as a family. But I had made my decision, and Judge Patterson's words kept echoing in my mind. This was not just about the slap. This was about years of manipulation and boundary violations that had finally escalated to physical violence. The court case itself was straightforward. Madison pled guilty to assault in the third degree in exchange for a reduced sentence. She received 6 months of probation, 100 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management counseling. She was also required to issue a public apology and pay for my medical expenses, though thankfully my injuries were minor. The public apology was the most satisfying part of the entire process. Standing in the same courthouse where she had been convicted, Madison read a statement acknowledging that her behavior had been unacceptable and that family relationships do not excuse physical violence. She looked smaller, somehow deflated by the reality of facing consequences for her actions. The family fallout was predictable, but painful. My parents initially blamed me for destroying Madison's reputation and marriage. They could not understand how I could press charges against my own sister. But as time went on and they had space to process what had really happened, their perspective began to shift. Several relatives who had witnessed the assault reached out to me privately to express their support. Aunt Patricia, who had been so critical of me before the wedding, called to apologize for pressuring me to give in to Madison's demands. I had no idea how bad things had gotten, she said. What she did at the wedding was inexcusable. I am sorry I did not see the manipulation for what it was. Kevin, perhaps, unsurprisingly struggled with the aftermath more than anyone else. He had married Madison just hours before watching her assault her sister in front of their entire wedding party. The incident cast a shadow over their honeymoon and their early marriage that they never quite recovered from. They separated 6 months later and divorced within a year. As for Madison herself, the consequences seemed to genuinely shock her into self-reflection. The anger management counseling helped her recognize the patterns of manipulation and emotional abuse that had characterized her behavior for years. She started individual therapy and slowly began to understand how her entitlement and jealousy had poisoned our relationship. It took almost 2 years, but Madison eventually reached out to me with a genuine apology. Not the court-mandated public statement, but a real conversation about how her behavior had been wrong and how she wanted to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. I have spent months in therapy, trying to understand why I felt so entitled to your penthouse. She told me during our first real conversation since the wedding. I think I was jealous of your success and felt like you owed me something because you had achieved more than I had. But that was not fair to you, and it was not healthy for me. We met for coffee in a neutral location, both nervous about seeing each other again. Madison looked different somehow, more subdued, but also more genuine than I had seen her in years. I know I cannot undo what I did, she continued, and I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I understand now that what I did was wrong on every level. The rebuilding process has been slow and careful. We see each other occasionally now, always in public places, and always with clear boundaries. Madison has respected my decision not to let her visit my penthouse, understanding finally that some boundaries are not negotiable. I have also done my own work in therapy, learning to recognize manipulation tactics and trust my instincts when people try to make me feel guilty for setting reasonable limits. The experience taught me that self-respect is not selfish, and that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who will hurt you most if you let them. My relationship with my parents has also healed, though it took time for them to understand that supporting Madison's behavior had been harmful to both of us. They have learned to respect my boundaries and to see that treating your children equally does not mean giving in to whoever demands the most attention. I still live in my penthouse, and every morning when I wake up to that view of Elliott Bay, I am reminded of what I learned from this whole experience. The space represents more than just my professional success now. It represents my right to set boundaries, my commitment to self-respect, and my understanding that real love does not come with ultimatums attached. Sometimes people ask me if I regret pressing charges against Madison. They wonder if I could have handled things differently, if there was a way to resolve the conflict without involving the legal system. But I know that without real consequences, Madison's behavior would have continued to escalate. The slap was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of manipulation and boundary violations that I had enabled by trying to keep the peace. The hardest part of this whole experience was accepting that setting boundaries might cost me relationships, but that some relationships are not worth maintaining if they require you to sacrifice your self-respect. I learned that family love should not come with a price tag, and that people who truly care about you will respect your right to say no. That slap taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to hold them accountable for their actions, even when it is painful. Madison is a better person now because she faced consequences for her behavior. Our relationship, while different than it was before, is more honest and more respectful. And every time I look out at that water view from my penthouse windows, I remember that self-respect is worth more than keeping the peace. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family harmony and personal boundaries? Let me know in the comments below, and please share your own experiences with setting limits with difficult family members. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life family stories, and share this video with anyone who might be struggling with similar boundary issues. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve relationships built on respect, not manipulation. Until next time, take care of yourselves and trust your instincts about what feels right for your life.